Welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Conrad Weaver, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. Hey, I have a question. Is your check engine light on? No, I don't mean your car. Well, if it is, you better take a look at that. But how can you tell if your body is giving you signs that you need to work on some things? Today, my guest is Rob Wilson. He's a human performance coach, a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and a wellness educator who grew up in a law enforcement household, and he works with first responders today. Rob has developed a practical framework he calls the check engine light. And these are tools and mindset shifts to help you take control of your stress, fitness, sleep, and emotional resilience. You'll walk away from this episode with real strategies you can apply today to extend your career, protect your health, and serve your community at the highest level. Hey, if you think this episode would help a friend, send them a link right now and invite them to listen too. Let's dive in. Well, Rob, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. So glad to have you on the program today. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So tell us a little bit about you. What's your relationship to first responders and or the wellness industry, so to speak?
Sure. Well, first responders, my parents are both retired police officers. So my mom was a police officer in both Buffalo, New York, and then Virginia Beach, Virginia, where I still live. And my stepdad, Pocosin, Virginia. So he was a police officer after he got out of the Marine Corps. So I've been around first responders just because of family for my whole life. I'm still, still around first responders a lot. Police is pretty, law enforcement is a pretty close community. So like when you grow up and your parents are cops, then birthday parties are cops and Christmas time is cops and barbecues are cops.
Yeah.
And so, I have a really good relationship. And then still the work that I do through human performance. So I'm a human performance coach and educator, came up doing pain relief work and then strength and conditioning and teaching all kinds of stress management tools and philosophies. And I still work with first responders, which would include law enforcement, fire, EMS. And most recently, I had the opportunity to present at a leadership summit for FDNY, which was cool. really great. I learned a lot about modern challenges that first responders are facing. And so also I tend to share personal interests that a lot of those folks do. I'm a big jiu-jitsu guy, and you end up with a lot of fire and LEO especially get sort of entangled in that community, if you will. Because I grew up around it, I really have grown to appreciate the demands of those who serve our communities.
It really boggles my mind that, especially in law enforcement, they take a fitness test at the beginning of their career, and that's the end. That's it. That's the only time they get a fitness test. And for many of them, at least historically. And, you've seen the videos that are out there, some overweight cop chasing after a guy and the guy just takes off, climbs a fence and the cop gets stuck on the fence and can't keep up because he or she's overweight. What needs to happen to change that mindset of, okay, pass the fitness test, but let's have a fitness test every year. I mean, shouldn't we do that? If we want healthy cops and that are able to do their job effectively, I think in fire they have to do that. I'm not quite sure about that, but
I think it varies based on department. That's my best understanding, is that it can vary quite broadly. For us in Virginia Beach, of course, not every cop is like some super soldier looking person.
Sure.
But when I'm out in public, a lot of police officers here are quite fit, probably because it's a military community.
Right.
So the city tends to be generally healthier, which sort of brings me to a broader point, which is that the state of our first responder health is a reflection of a broader culture. So we don't have a very healthy culture in the United States. People are not fit. Fitness is not, and health is not a priority. PE is getting taken out of schools. So we're like, oh, how do we get law enforcement? Well, I say kids because people who go through the academies now are mostly in their early 20s, right? So they're kids. Well, those kids grew up in the last 20 years. And what happened in the last 20 years? Everybody got a lot less healthy on average. And so the pool of people that you have to choose from gets reduced, right? As far as fitness being a priority, right? Now, in addition to that, we have a pool of less fit people. Then the type of personality who prioritizes fitness as sort of a core value may not want to enter into a profession where they're meticulously scrutinized for every 2-second decision they make. Those kind of motivated people will probably just go, that ain't worth it. I'm going to go do something else.
Right.
And so then we have a further reduction of the pool of like fit, motivated individuals who even if it's not mandated by the department, would take it upon themselves to go, man, I need to be fit for this. Now, I say that, and I don't work with departments all the time. I have, really at best second tier information from first responders that I work with directly or that I know. But what I know for sure is that my parents 30 years ago were beating this drum with a healthier culture, and that there still was some uphill battle in regards to maintaining health and fitness. Sometimes it's just because the way that it's presented in the culture matters. And this is definitely something that I've learned working with different first responder cultures or military cultures, is that the facts aren't enough. Right. And I mean, you're a storyteller, right? You're a filmmaker. Facts aren't enough. If you just took everything from the documentaries that you have made and you just put them into bullet points and you put it out as a PDF, that's not nearly as effective as telling a story that touches people and they go, wow, I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that about the people around me. I didn't know that about the police officers and the firefighters that serve my community. Man, I'm going to act different towards them. I'm going to think about their struggle. I might even try to do something that would relieve that burden from them because they connect to the narrative. I think when we throw bullet points at any group of people, law enforcement, fire, they go, okay. But if you can help construct a narrative that's easy for them to digest, that's palatable, and it seems like it's executable under the real conditions they're dealing with, the likelihood that they'll do something is much higher. And for them to realize, like when I talk to groups, I say, you don't have to get an A+ all the time. Honestly, if you got like a B- for 10 years, you'd be doing pretty
above
awesome.
The norm, right?
You'd be doing pretty awesome. And you'd be able to continue to do your job, do it well, and have something left in the gas tank for your family and for yourself when you're done. Because you might retire from one of these first responder careers and be like 50. Right? You might be.
And that's young. I mean, I'm an old guy, so 50's young.
50's young, right? There's still a lot of life after 50, especially now. 30 more years after 50. Well, what happens a lot is first responders get out, and then all the drive that was keeping them above water because of the demand of the job, suddenly that's gone. And what happens? The debt collector of the body and the mind goes, hey, you're not busy anymore. We're messed up.
And I think some of that has to do with a loss of purpose as well.
Agreed. Loss of purpose, loss of camaraderie. Who do you talk to? If you go to a job every day for 25 years, has unique types of pressure and situations, and you see things and deal with things and cope with things that most people will never have an idea
So you mentioned jiu-jitsu. Is that something you practice yourself, or is that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's my hobby
that's your jam.
obsession. That's my jam.
Yeah. So tell me about that. I've known some people that have done that, but I don't know much about it. And how does that help your body first, and how does it help your mind?
Well, so jujitsu is kind of interesting, and of course, my answer is completely biased. I'm sure you can get these things elsewhere, but this is my preference.
Mm-hmm.
One is that you move your body in extraordinarily unique ways. You can't do it without figuring out very, very quickly where your body is competent and where it's not. So you get your level of movement acuity gets exposed very quickly, which is great because then you can do something about it. So it gets exposed in a controlled environment. And then you go, man, I'm glad I figured out my hip doesn't work like that. Let me go start doing some stretches. Let me get a little bit stronger. Let me improve my cardio. So because the environment demands a lot of you physically, what ends up happening is people start doing other healthy things from the jiu-jitsu environment. And also nested in that is both competition and cooperation. So you're competing because you and your training partner always have opposing objectives. I'm trying to pin you. You're trying not to let me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But also you have to cooperate with people to some degree, because if you're a jerk, nobody wants to train with you, and you will get you'll feel it and you'll get pushed to the edge of the culture pretty quickly. So you have to regulate yourself emotionally. You have to deal with failure quite often. Oh, I didn't really get that. All right. Jiu-jitsu is really hard because especially up front, even if you are fit, you fail a lot. You're just constantly sort of losing over and over. So it builds a type of psychological resilience where you just go, well, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. And all of that is baked into a culture. And there's the sort of broad jiu-jitsu culture, but then each training room or each school has its own culture. And again, what ends up happening is in good schools, in my experience, there's a lot of focus on not just competition, but also cooperation and health. And okay, how do you stay on? People are always like, okay, you got this little injury. What do you do? What's the best way to exercise? How much water should I drink? You know what? I'm not recovering as well as I want to. How can I eat better? Are there supplements that might help? Man, I should probably get my sleep. So it sort of gets baked into this environment that's a lot of fun because it's a sport, right? You're just doing a sport it's a hobby. So it gets baked into the environment. And that's why it's actually really helpful for a lot of first responders. I know. So a good friend of mine, his name is Felix Manjares. He's a wellness coordinator and was an academy instructor at FDNY. He started the FDNY grappling club. And so he really wanted to figure out, how do I get firefighters to buy into wellness and health? And he was like, man, when you come through the front door, sometimes it's like, I don't know, that's a lot. But if you create something that's fun and communal and there's a little competition and everybody gets together and you have a good laugh and you wrestle around and you trust each other, and then you're like, oh man, let's go on sleep. And so it was kind of like this side door into wellness. And it works so well that NYPD has a jiu-jitsu club, and they all get together and some people do competitions and some people do it just for fun, but they have like their own jiu-jitsu schools that are embedded in the environment. And I know that's getting more and more common as the sport grows.
And for law enforcement, that can be helpful when you're going after a bad guy, you're trying to take someone down, or someone tries to fight you, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is some tactical carryover, controlling the body of another human being. There are some, my understanding, because I haven't been a law enforcement officer, but my understanding is that there are some special considerations that have to be made because the environment's different. So there are weapons multiple people, bystanders. There's laws that apply to you differently in law enforcement. So the way that you use it and the context is different, but as a foundational mechanism for being comfortable manipulating the body of a resisting person, it's great, I think. And the other thing is, if you know that you can, to some degree, defend yourself, then you carry that confidence around all the time. And what ends up happening, my understanding is that in departments that introduce jiu-jitsu as part of their fundamental defensive tactics curriculum, they see reduction in rates of use of force in general. The use of force for officers goes down, even though they're more capable of committing violence, they do it less, which is a big deal, right? That's a huge thing, not only because it's important for community relations, but if you think from an officer's point of view, it's going to be less stressful to interact with people if you're not afraid of what's going to happen. If you go, well, I know how to handle this situation. If I got to go hands-on and arrest this person, then I know I can do it without hurting me or hurting them. And so there's not a big hoopla about it. I don't have to deal with all the fallout. And what ends up happening is that they end up doing it less. They're more comfortable talking.
Sure. It's kind of like, I want to get political. It's kind of like that, national thing. It's peace through strength. You keep the peace because you have a strong military and you're ready to use the military if there's, just like we saw last week, it's peace through strength. And it's kind of the same principle.
Yeah. I mean, some of the nicest, calmest, sweetest people I know are some of the most capable of violence, but they choose not to do it. Now that's not everybody, but for sure, the type of people who generally will choose a path like law enforcement have more noble character on average, right? And if you give them the appropriate tools that really work, then they can build confidence through developing physical fitness and real tactical skill. And then it's going to be less stressful because they know the things that happen, they have the tools to deal with it. I mean, imagine if somebody said like, build a house or I'm going to kill you, but they didn't give you any nails or hammers or any knowledge of how to build a house. They just threw some lumber in the yard and said, you got 7 days. That would be really stressful. But if you were a master carpenter and they gave you all the tools and everything you needed, then it wouldn't be not stressful at all, but it would be less stressful because you would know what course of action to take. You'd be like, oh, I built a house before. Okay. Step 1, let me get to work. So I don't know, maybe that's a
that makes total
weird
sense,
analogy, but
So in your coaching with first responders specifically, what have you seen are some of the biggest challenges or needs within the first responder community when it comes to wellness and taking care of themselves?
Identifying legitimate markers of stress and then having appropriate tools to deal with it. So really, truly understanding how to differentiate between this is just the demand of the job and this is a sign from my body and mind that things aren't going great, and how to manage the toggle a little bit better. One of the, can I get like coaching sciencey for a minute? Is that fine?
Go for it.
So there's a concept called allostatic load. All right. This is really relevant to the first responder community and something that's getting studied with first responders quite a bit. So allostatic load is basically, for all intents and purposes, the cost of doing business, right? So there's a range of physiological norms that the body has to be in order to continue to adapt, right? So we're getting all kinds of stress inputs from the environment, whether we choose them, like exercise, or whether we don't, like an emergency call for service, right? Mm-hmm. And what happens is we have this bandwidth and we go out of the bandwidth and we go sympathetic, right? That's sympathetic when we have a stress response, and then the stressor discontinues. And if the system is healthy, we go back into the bandwidth. And if we're given appropriate resources, what will happen is the system will become more robust and it will stay stable. However, over time, what can happen is insufficient opportunity to recover appropriately can occur. And so what will happen is our resilience will become lower. Mm-hmm. And when we feel those things like chronic fatigue, mood dysregulation, reduced ability to recover from a traumatic event, those kind of things show up, what will happen if you're still in the job that demands your ability to focus and execute is you will compensate around it because there's no other choice. And so what will happen is you will do things like, I wake up in the morning, I'm really tired and I don't feel good. Caffeine, nicotine. Then at the end of shift, man, I can't relax. Alcohol. That disrupts things like sleep. Good nutrition isn't always available, or first responders don't know how to select good nutrition in the environment they work in. And then what happens? It disrupts sleep architecture. They don't get good rest, even the rest that's available. Then they wake up. What happens? Fatigue. Caffeine, nicotine, alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that roller coaster happens. Now, that's not like a 1-day roller coaster. That's a 10-year roller coaster. Mm-hmm. So the cycle of reduced resilience and poor health is very insidious. It's really hard to detect unless you know how to look, unless you have some markers in place that let you know, like, oh man, I'm not resting very well. Oh man, my mood is not very good. Oh man, I sure am drinking a lot more coffee. And so what happens is if the system doesn't have sufficient opportunity to recover, we'll enter what we call allostatic overload, where predisposition for disease, poor health, illness, where those things get higher and higher. And the terminology that I use is you become operationally robust, but biologically brittle, which means you develop experience doing your job, knowing how to compensate around the things that are making you less healthy and resilient, but you're sort of dancing on a razor's edge of it all falling apart at any time. Burnt out by the job, not getting along with teammates, angry at command structure, frustrated with your own internal emotional systems, feeling behind, never well rested. Then we have biological markers, testosterone levels going down, super high cortisol. That's all allostatic overload. And with those things, the sort of mechanisms that influence allostatic load and allostatic overload are the magnitude of the stressor. So how intense was the stressor, the frequency of the stressor, and then the opportunity to recover from the stressor.
How can I, so if I'm not really self-aware, and I'm speaking about myself here, how can I see those markers? If I'm not aware that maybe I'm drinking too much caffeine or I'm, over medicating myself with alcohol, which I'm not, but probably the caffeine, because I actually have a cup of coffee in front of me here. How can I be more self-aware? How can I help myself kind of see those markers that are in my life that I need to be aware of?
Two things I will say right off the bat. One, you can use technology. So there's technology, there's wearable health technology that can be helpful for tracking things like sleep, heart rate variability, resting heart rate, where it will give us some insight into what's going on under the system. We have some non-technological things where do you have exercises that you do on a regular basis? Do you have opportunity for self-reflection? Are you paying attention to how you're getting along with other people's, what's your social life like, what's your level of fatigue. So actually doing audits, right? And having practices. This is another place where something like jiu-jitsu can come in handy because it's a stable practice where you go, oh man, I've been a lot more sore lately. I've been a lot more tired and fatigued lately. Man, I'm getting mad at my training partners more often. Is it them? Is it jiu-jitsu? Or is something going on with me? So sometimes practices can be helpful. In addition to that, I actually have a whole program that I developed for this purpose because I realized that people in the military and first responder communities don't know how to do this, right? There's all kinds of training for other things. If you become a police officer, you go through an academy, you learn laws, you learn defensive tactics, you learn how to use firearms, you learn how to use vehicles and do all kinds of systems checks on all those things, how you're supposed to wear your uniform, different uniforms for different conditions, but you're not issued a system for taking care of yourself. Same thing in the fire department. You do a gear check every day. Every piece of equipment that goes on the truck, you know it's going to work when you need it because you looked, and there's a system, and every firefighter knows it. Everybody who rides in an ambulance knows how to check all the medical equipment. Are those things up to date? Because what you don't want to be doing is riding at 80 miles an hour to the hospital with a patient and have something that you need not work. So you're issued all that, but nobody gets issued a system for how to maintain, what's the basics of maintaining me. And so as an answer to that, I developed this check engine light curriculum, which is what are the basics of maintaining you? How do you do it for your mind? How do you do it for the movement of your body? And how do you do it for the basic sort of chemistry? And none of it has to be very complicated. It doesn't have to be time consuming. But if you know how to sort of create a dashboard for yourself that lets you know, how am I actually handling stress right now? You know, and like I said, one of the things that is often ignored, people go right to tech, right? I'm going to get a Whoop. But sometimes the most clear component of understanding how you're dealing with stress is, how am I relating to others around me? If I find that I have less empathy, if I won't consider another point of view, if I'm getting a lot more friction in my relationships, if I'm quick to anger or be frustrated, fast to quit in a situation that's challenging me, those are all signs that something is going on. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you, but that's your mind being a little more volatile and saying like, we can't handle much more. Right. And then if you know that that's happening, do you have tools in place rather than input, job, phone, TV, whatever? Is there a time when you just let your mind be at peace with no input and allow your brain to organize all that stuff that you're dealing with? For most, the answer is no. Right? Do you have some systems checks for your body? You don't have to become a professional weightlifter to be a police officer or firefighter. You have to be strong enough and fit enough to do the job plus a little, right? The job plus a little, and then have some sequence that you are comfortable with and you understand that lets you know, hey, I do 3 days a week. I do 100 squats. I do 50 push-ups at whatever rate I can do it. And you do that every week and you go, man, when I did squats last week, I could do sets of 20. This week, I started getting tired at sets of 10. Am I really unfit in a week's time? Or is something else contributing to fatigue? What else is happening here? And that's kind of relationship we want to develop with the body and the mind, is like, what else? Where else?
So
right?
How important is being aware of your sleep? How important is that? Because sleep can be really a marker for how you're doing, right?
It is. And, sleep is sort of like the hot topic in health and wellness, and it's certainly important. A little bit of a bugaboo that I have with the way it's presented to first responder communities is it's presented in an idealized fashion that's often not possible for people with the constraints of the job. Right. So the way that a first responder's schedule is organized isn't from command going, how does everyone get the best night of sleep? Their priority is, how do I take this labor force that I have, which is reduced recruitment numbers? I have less people with a growing community, and cover the bases. So that's the command structure's burden. And then integrate the need for rest to people who are the boots on the ground. Now, those people, whether you're talking about sort of beat cops, right? Or, firefighters who are on the truck, or EMS who are on the ambulance, they need to understand what ideal sleep looks like, right? 8+ hours, what sleep good architecture is, things like how much deep sleep am I getting? How much REM am I getting? What's my latency? How are those cycles supposed to work? That's important to know so that you can compare yourself against the ideal. However, if you're in a job where 4 days a week, you get woken up every 70 minutes, every 20 to 70 minutes to go do stuff, what's going to happen is your brain's going to get good at being vigilant during times when you should be resting. And to know that nothing's wrong with you if that happens, that that's normal. But finding times to rest when perfect sleep is not possible is important. And then having strategies that help our first responders downshift appropriately, and to know what it feels like to, what I call it, pumping the brakes, right? So you're at work, it's gas pedal, gas pedal, gas pedal. You have to be paying attention. You have to be on point. Even when you're resting, you have to be ready. That's gas pedal, right? Do you know how to pump the brakes? And there's things that you can do, like learning breath work. There's yoga nidra, which sounds like very airy-fairy, but it's basically just listening to a script that helps you relax and has been proven in good science to help you achieve sleep-like states that can make up for lack of sleep to some degree. So understanding what ideal is, not to punish yourself because it's not possible, but so okay, that's what I'm aiming for. Now, for me, what works? Because if you're an ER nurse, you're not going to get 8.5 hours of beautiful sleep when you work the night shift. It's not going to happen. But how close can I get with what I've got, right? I'm a big fan of the Teddy Roosevelt quote, do what you can, when you can, with what you've got. And so sometimes we think of these things in terms of zeros and ones. I either get this perfect sleep everyone's talking about, or screw it. This is just how the job is. And there's some gray in there, which is when I'm home, do I have strategies that help me sleep better? And when I'm not, and I'm at work, do I know how to take advantage of opportunities to rest, to shift the system into rest? And one of the strategies, whether we're talking about transitioning to sleep or just relaxing, one of the tools that I find best is breath control work. I've had massive success, and that's one of the things I've probably shared most with first responder environments, is using breath control, both in the live performance environment to regulate your emotions and your physiology, but also to use it to transition into states of sleep and rest when you have opportunities to do so.
I know that's a big training tactic for like the Navy SEALs and some of those, really guys that go into really dangerous situations, so that they're taught how to breathe, how to prepare themselves for that situation so that they're ready in the moment.
Yeah. And what you find is, like, in these high demand environments, what ends up happening is the temperament that those jobs selects for knows how to figure stuff out. Like, I'm just going to make it happen. If you're dragging hose up a bunch of stairs to get to the top floor of an apartment, you're just going to stop. Like, even if you don't know a breathing strategy, boy, you're going to figure one out real quick, because you got to get up there no matter what, because your whole team is relying on you. Not to mention everybody in the building, but the person in front of you and behind you is relying on you to do your job. So what will you do? You'll make it work. And so even in the absence of the skills of self-regulation, people who perform in those environments will just get it done because it must be done, sometimes at greater cost than others. And that's often what we're talking about, is none of these environments are free. Like, if you're going to be a police officer for 25 years, firefighter 25 years, emergency medicine 25 years, it's going to be expensive. Like, it's not free to do those jobs. That's why, if you're a citizen, you need to be really appreciative of people who serve your community, because they're giving something up for you, for us. And so you acknowledge it. And then we're talking about cost mitigation. How can we make this cost you as little as possible so that you can do a good job for us? Sure, that's awesome. But also make it out the other side and not be a mess. Right. But it's not going to be free. If no matter what happens, you're going to see wild stuff. You're going to experience things that people outside of your profession cannot understand ever. And so that's the cost. That's what you give. But you can make the bank account that you spend from a lot bigger and a lot more stable if you maintain health and fitness through simple strategies. No question about it.
That's good stuff. So if someone's listening and they're like, okay, how can I get started to really hone in on myself and my environment and my body, what my body's telling me? What's a good first step? What should be the process there?
Well, so a couple things. One, I write about this constantly. Like, legitimately every week I put out a blog post that's free, that has all kinds of different articles about how to do this stuff. That's my Substack, it's Check Engine Light, so you can find things there. Of course, I have a book that's just recently out. It's called Check Engine Light. You can find that. The cool thing about that book, if I might say so, biases, is that it's not a bunch of protocols. And so for sure, there's simple things you can do, and I'm going to talk about those. But I think one thing that's really important, and the reason I really wrote the book, because like, how many more health books do we need? Turns out we need them, right? Is to learn what works for you. No matter what any expert says on any podcast, we're individuals. So there are some stable things that tend to work most frequently, but no stranger on a screen knows your life. And so what you have to do is find ways to measure what matters to you, implement something for a given period of time, and then decide if the effect was worth the investment. And if the answer is yes, you keep doing that thing until the answer is no. And then you do a new thing. And that's actually how you learn stuff. And so with health, for example, one thing that I use a lot is sun salutation from yoga. Now, I'm not, a super yogi person, but I studied yoga all through like college years, and then have maintained a daily practice of sun salutation. If you're not familiar with sun salutation, it's basically a series of really simple postures where you reach your arms over your head, you touch your toes, you do a lunge, you do down dog, right, where your head goes through your arms, you do up dog, you do lunge on the other side, then you touch your toes again, then you reach your arms over your head. And you do that all in tandem with slow, smooth, purposeful breathing. And what that helps you do is develop a dialogue with what's going on with your body and your mind. So sun salutation is not fancy. You don't have to be super flexible to do it. I'm not super flexible. I don't use it for flexibility. I use it to go, how am I doing today? And I've done it pretty much daily for about 25 years. I do it while my coffee's brewing. So it takes very little time, very little space. You don't need to be a health expert. You don't need to be a certain level of fitness. But while you're doing it, you can ask yourself some questions like, do I even want to do this today? Maybe if you have mental resistance to even doing something that's very simple, that's your first insight into how you're doing. Can I breathe slowly and smoothly? How is my nervous system responding to the stress that it's under? Do I have the ranges of motion to do these things? If not, how might they be affecting other things that I care about or that I need to be able to do? What would happen if I improve them? How's the quality of my motion? Does it feel like I'm dragging a bag of bricks through mud when I move my hips? Or is it slow and smooth like an athlete? Those kind of questions, this is all, by the way, built into some of the experiments I have in the book and in some of the articles that I have. I wrote an article called Function Check, which is about like, hey, if you do a gear check, right? If you're a first responder, do you have a check in for your body and your mind? And this is one really simple way to do it. One of my preferred ways, because it doesn't require any equipment. So you don't have to spend any money to do it. You just have to learn the poses and how to breathe and then do it consistently. And you can really learn some cool things. Like one thing I learned personally is I track my sleep I've been tracking my sleep for probably 4 or 5 years. And I've been doing sun salutation a long time. And one thing I realized is when my low back gets stiff for a couple days in a row, and I haven't done an exercise that's related, for me, I know that means my deep sleep is off. And I know that because I've looked at those data points together. So I go, oh man. So now if I'm not in the habit of sort of checking the app on my phone, if I have a couple of days where I'm like, ooh, the toe touch is feeling kind of stiff, I'm like, hold on a second. Have I been going to bed on time? Or am I staying up late watching TV? Or, was I mad when I went to bed? Or was I distracted? Or was I on my phone? What else is going on? And that's what happens is it starts to become a method of self-investigation. What else is happening? It's not about a judgment call. I'm doing right things. I'm doing wrong things. It's about, hold on, let me zoom out here for a second. What are the patterns that I'm in? Are those patterns helping me? Or are they not? Some aren't. What could I change? I'm going to try to change this one thing. Let me see how it works out. And so now we're in a process rather than do this protocol for sleep. Because if you do a protocol for sleep and you really believe in the person who gave it to you, you're like, oh, that person is whatever, Dr. Brainhead from the most prestigious university. And they said this sleep protocol works for 99.99 repeating % of people. And then I try it as a first responder and it doesn't work. What's the conclusion I'm going to come to? It doesn't work for me. My sleep is broken. Screw it. And that's not some hyperbole I'm making up. These are conversations I've had. Mm-hmm. Instead of that, we can start an investigation. What works for you? What's the real problem you have? What have you tried before? How do you know it worked? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's much more interesting for people than try this blanket prescription and that's it. That's the end. A, B. No, let's learn about you, and you should know about you. So that's my approach.
It's really good stuff. Yeah. And so I want to know, so that people can kind of connect with you. How can people find you? How can they find your book, and how can they learn some of these things themselves directly from you?
Sure, I'm easy to find. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at the Check Engine Light on Instagram. My Substack is checkenginelight.substack.com. checkengine.com, and you can find my book on Amazon, which is called Check Engine Light, Tuning Mind and Body for Performance Longevity.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's time for me to check my engine light. And maybe it's time for our listeners and our viewers to check their engine light as well. And so, Rob, thank you for your insights and for your wisdom and for writing the book. I look forward to getting it and diving into it myself, and looking forward to learning more about myself and how I can regulate myself in better ways. So
awesome. Conrad, thanks so much for having me on.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the First Responder Wellness Podcast. A huge thanks to Rob Wilson for sharing his insight, experience, and practical tools to help first responders like you build stronger bodies, sharper minds, and a sustainable career. Rob's message is clear. You don't have to wait for a breakdown to start paying attention. Your body, your mind, and your mission deserve better. And with tools like breathwork, basic movement, and stress awareness, you can tune your system for longevity and success. So be sure to grab Rob's book. It's called Check Engine Light, Tuning Mind and Body for Performance and Longevity. It's available on Amazon. I've put the link in the show notes, so go check it out. And be sure to follow him on Instagram at the Check Engine Light, or subscribe to his Substack for regular wellness strategies built for the unique demands of the first responder life. Hey, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a teammate. Leave us a review and stay connected. Your health matters, your performance matters, and most of all, you matter. And like I've said before, wellness is not optional. In fact, it's essential. And finally, please take care of yourself. And remember that you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.